Hey guys, it's Gabe. So, for my first video today, I'm going to go over a game between me and Joaquin Perkins from the National Junior Chess Congress back in 2019. Just a bit of context about this game. So, it was the third round of the tournament, so both of us are in 2 out of 2, which means that this is a really, really important game for the overall match standings. I know that Joaquin is always a tough opponent. It's never easy to go against him, so I had to bring my A game. And I had the white pieces in this game, so I was really looking forward to trying to get an advantage early and then press on throughout the game. And yeah, let's get into it. So, we'll start the game now. I played d4 for my first move, and he went knight of 6. I went knight of 3, and he played g6. So g6, the idea is that he wants to fianchetto his bishop, which means he'll go to bishop g7. And I played g3 because I want to do the exact same thing. Bishop g7, bishop g2, castles, and I castled as well. And now he's got a variety of moves to choose from. He can play something like d6. He can play c5. He can play d5, which is what he did in the game. And after d5, you guys can probably see that it's a symmetrical structure. So I chose to play the move c4, which is the most common move. And I really expected him to play the move d takes c4. And in my preparation, I thought d takes c4, knight a3, c3 takes, and then c5 would be the way to go. Because this is the most, in my opinion, one of the most common ways to play. And that's really what I expected during this game. But it was not to be. He played c6, which is also a popular and totally fine move. The idea is that if I take on d5, he wants to take with the pawn, and once again it's symmetrical, and then black should be doing fine here. White doesn't have much, but I can obviously still play on a c6, knight e5, and he played knight d7. So knight e5 is not the most common here, but it is my move of choice. He played knight d7, and I went knight c3. Now here is one of the more interesting moments of the game, is when he played knight b6. So he played knight b6 here, and I wasn't really sure exactly how to approach this position. I wanted to make sure that he can't play just knight takes c4 immediately, because I feel like knight takes c4 or d takes c4 are now actual threats. So I chose to go c takes d5, and I was expecting him to take back with the pawn. If pawn takes, and I was going to kind of use the fact that I'm attacking this pawn a few times to play a4, and then try and go a5, dislodge this knight, and then keep the pressure on this pawn. Instead, he actually really surprised me here. He took on d5 with the knight. Now, the reason this move surprised me is that now I'm able to get a big center, and normally when you have a big center like this, you're going to be able to have a more sizable advantage, and it's not going to be something so minuscule. I can actually try and press forward with something like this. So I played e4 in this game, and then he took on c3, and I took back. So now you can see I have more center pawns. My knight on e5 is centralized, and I have a variety of good squares to put my pieces on. I can play probably rook b1 to put more pressure on this b7 pawn. I can play queen b3, keep an eye on the b7 pawn, and keep an eye on the f7 pawn. I also play bishop a3, take advantage of this nice diagonal here. So a lot of great options. After b takes c3, he played queen a5, and the point of this move is he attacks c3 pawn, so I defended it with queen b3. And now he played knight d7. And this is a very, very crucial moment in the game. So after knight d7, I was, first of all, immediately I have to start calculating the line knight takes d7. And after knight takes d7, bishop takes d7, it's important to note that I can take this b7 pawn, but he can respond with queen takes c3. After queen takes c3, I can not take this bishop because he is threatening my rook here. So I'm threatening his bishop, and he's threatening my rook. One of the ways I thought I could get out of this was by playing bishop b2, so attacking his queen, and if he moves, let's say queen c4 or something like that, I can now take his bishop. However, he has a nice resource here. He can keep his queen here and keep pressure on the bishop, so that if I take his bishop, he takes mine. And if I try and dislodge his queen more, which I thought would be a good idea with like rook d1, he actually has a very, very nice resource in that rook b8 can be played. So rook b8, and here I'm attacking his queen, and he's attacking mine. And if I take this rook, hoping that he takes back, and I take his queen, he actually has a nice resource, which is that he can take my rook with check, which means that I have to take back. Rook takes d1, and after rook takes b8, should be about equal. I think that I still have the center, but most of my threats have, my advantageous threats have been, kind of dissipated, and it looks like black should be fine here. He should be able to hold. So also, it's important to note that I can't take the bishop. Well, I can take the bishop, but it doesn't lead to much of an advantage here. I play queen takes d7, and if he plays queen takes b2, I thought here maybe I had an e5, but I was worried about a c5 in response to undermine my center pawns. But the engine actually suggests that black should be totally fine after f6, which is a definitely not an intuitive move, but the engine comes up with some weird suggestions sometimes, and it looks like black should be fine here. The whole point is that black's king really is safe due to the fact that, obviously I don't have a dark squared bishop, so if he keeps his king on h8, his bishop is fine. His position will be fine. His bishop covers everything, and he has control of this. He's going to have control of the long diagonal, so he should be all right. But that's why I chose not to go for this knight takes c7 idea. I did notice that I could play knight c4, and now his knight is restricting his bishop, and his pieces still look a bit cramped. So I was pretty happy with knight c4, queen c7. I wanted to play bishop f4 here to attack the queen with tempo, force it to move again, but it looked like black can probably go e5, and I didn't want to allow this with tempo, so I played bishop e3. After bishop e3, he played b6, and his idea with b6 is that he wants to play bishop e7 or bishop a6 to attack my knight or just develop his bishop in a natural way. I played rook fd1, put my rook in the center, and he played bishop b7. After bishop b7, I chose to go a4, and my idea with a4 is that I want to basically play a4 and a5, chip away at the queen side, and then try and break through there, because I have the open lines on the queen side. His pieces are definitely cramped. I have the space advantage. Seems only natural that I should try and press forward like this. I played a4, and then he played e5. After e5, I thought that if he's going to take on d4 and I was going to take with my c-pawn, ideally I'd want my rook right here so I could have it on the same line as his queen. So I went rook c1, but then he played the move c5. And admittedly, I think that c5 is probably a mistake from him. And the reason why is that I can play d5, and after d5 I have what's called a protective pass pawn. A protected pass pawn on d5 is incredibly strong in this specific scenario because he has no blockaders on the square in front of it. So for example, if he had, let's say, his bishop on d6, let's see if I can, this bishop, let's say he rerouted here magically in a few moves, it'd be good because he could blockade the square. Right now it looks like I have complete control, and my pawn is very dangerous. After I played d5, he went rook a e8, and his idea here, I believe, was that he wants to kind of line up his rooks over here to prepare for this f5 push and try and get some counterplay on the king side, because right now I currently have the space advantage in the center, and I'm looking to chip away the queen side. So after rook e8, I noticed that this rook has no future on the c-file because it's been kind of clogged up like this, so I went back to a1 with rook a1 to try and go a5 and a takes b6. He plays bishop a6 to try and dislodge my knight. I played bishop f1 to defend it, and he actually took on c6 immediately. And yeah, the point of his idea is here is that if I take on c4, he wants to go queen d6. And here he has achieved the blockade right in front of this pawn, so he can't move forward, and he wants to play f5. Notice that before he couldn't go f5 because, let's say, bishop a6, bishop f1, f5. Yeah, let's say he tries to go f5 here. I would have had a really nice move d6, and wherever the queen goes, let's say that goes to b8 or something, I can play knight takes e5, and I have what's called a discovered check on the king. And let's say the king moves, and now I can just take this knight for free, and I'm winning a ton of material and probably the game. So he chose to blockade first and then play f5. So Bishop takes c4, queen takes c4, queen d6. Now, normally I think this would be a pretty good idea if you can get f5 in and try and attack the king side, but I do have a really nice resource here, in that I can actually try and kick the queen away from the blockading square. So I went queen b5, and my idea is to go queen c6. This is very, very dangerous because it's deceptively it's kind of deceptively annoying, this queen c6 idea, because let's say he says, okay, I want to exchange the queens once he gets to c6. Well, say he plays a random move like, I don't know, h6, h6 here, queen c6, and let's say he trades, takes, and plays like knight f6. Already here I have bishop a6, and my pawn is just going to run down the board, and it should be a very good position for me. Yeah, that's the benefit of the light squared bishop. So it's also dangerous because he can't really blockade it that well. Let's say he tries to play something like bishop f6. I go queen c6, and he wants to go bishop e7. So he says, okay, if you take my queen, I'll take back, and I still have this nice blockade, and I'll try and play f5. Problem with this is that if this bishop moves, already I have bishop h6. And because these rooks are kind of like in a non-ideal spot, I'm able to win the exchange immediately, and that should be very good for me. So after queen b5, he has to find a way to keep my queen out of c6 to prevent me from infiltrating. So he goes rook c8. Now rook c8, it stops queen c6, so I played a5. And a5, I want to trade on b6. I want to play a takes b6, a takes b6, and then probably bring my rook down. So he wants to stop it by going rook c7. I trade anyway and put my rook in a6. And now he decides to go f5. And after f5, I knew I had to play this next move. It's very, very important. I played bishop h3. Bishop h3 is important because it prevents him from moving the f-pawn any further. If he takes on e4, this pawn is probably a goner, but it's not even important to pick it up now. The whole idea is that this bishop is opened up, and if I can remove this knight, then the defense of this pawn is weakened, and I can take this pawn, and if this pawn falls, then this pawn falls, and I'll be able to kind of advance this center queenside majority, and then the e-pawn is it's worthless here, so it's not good to take that. And if he plays something like f4, I can just retreat my bishop, and there is no attack here really. I just have a very beautiful piece here that's staring down at this knight. It could also plant itself on e6 square, and this is just going to be a very, very good position for me. So after bishop h3, he played h6. The point of h6 will be very, very clear after his next move. So I played, he played h6, and then I played rook da1, and then he played rook f6. So before, he couldn't do this without going h6 because I would potentially go bishop g5 and attack his rook. But now the h6 pawn is covering the square. So rook f6, I played rook a7. My idea here is that I want to kind of remove some of these pieces on the 7th rank so that I can, if I force him to go back, the defense of the pawns becomes weaker, and then I can start picking up these pawns, and then we should have ourselves a good game. He plays king f7. He's trying to bring his king in to defend a lot of the pieces on the 7th rank, which is understandable, but his position is definitely cramped, and it was around this time when I realized that I should be close to converting this if I can just find a very, very accurate moves, which is still tough. Joaquin's a resilient guy for sure, and I had to be precise here. So after king f7, I went rook 1 a6, and here I'm just trying to keep pressure on this b6 pawn, which would if this b6 pawn becomes weak, then the c5 pawn becomes weak. I want to make sure that these pieces stay restricted and kind of hold them back, prevent any counterplay, stuff like that. He plays bishop f8, and I chose to go queen a4. So I have this really nice kind of triple battery thing going on, this like Alekine's gun type confirmation, and I am threatening to take on c7, queen takes c7, and play rook a7, and then I'll have a lot of pressure going down the 7th rank. Should be very good. So he played rook takes a7. I took on a7, of course. Sorry about that. There's a bit of a switch there. And then he went king e7. So far, it looks like he's defending well. I have 2 attackers on here, but he is defending it twice. So I chose to bring in another piece into the fray, bishop f1. This bishop is going to find a nice home on b5 where we'll put more pressure on d7. So he has to address this, and he goes rook f7. I played bishop e5 anyway, and then he played king d8. Notice I have 1, 2, 3 attackers, but he has 1, 2, 3 defenders here. So he is holding, but my next move kind of seals the deal. I played rook b7, and after rook b7, Joaquin actually resigned. And the reason is that currently I am threatening very devastating threat of queen a8 check. The point of queen a8 is that no matter what he does, he's going to lose a lot of material. Let's give any sample line. Let's say he plays just any move, like bishop g7. Bishop g7, I'll go queen a8. And when he goes to e7, I can take on d7. And after queen takes d7, bishop takes d7, king takes d7. It's curtains here. You know, I just want a lot of material. I have the queen now, and I can just kind of wrap it up pretty quickly. And this is really the best shot. I mean, let's say he plays king c8, or instead of bishop c7, he goes king c8. I go queen a8 anyway. If he tries to block with the knight, I can just pick up his rook, and then pretty soon it'll be like the same story. It'll be close to checkmate here. Yeah, after rook b7, it seems like it's all over. His pieces are just too cramped, and the bishop pair here is very, very strong. Yeah, and he resigned here in this position. So this is a really good game. I felt like I was doing a good job of avoiding any danger, playing to the point where I restricted a lot of the counterplay and just kind of allowed the game to be dictated at my pace, and just you know, not allowing me to play his game. Just really having a good position from the get-go and kind of pressing and growing that advantage until I was able to get victory. So yep, that's the game. I really enjoyed this game, obviously, because of all the instructive points that I could take from this game, as well as the fact that I will move to 3-0 in the tournament after this game, and I ended up winning the tournament. I was really happy with that. So yeah, that's all for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm definitely going to do more of these as well as other types of videos. So I guess stay tuned for that. Bye.